Hey guys, welcome to this Annotate with me. So today we're going to go through London. This is going to be an in-depth analysis and interpretations of the poem. As always, there will be a shorter version uploaded later this week, so if you're in a rush, I would definitely recommend heading over there. And if not, let's jump straight in. So London is a poem that was written by William Blake, and a really rough overview is that the narrator walks through the London and comments on the corruption and misery he is witnessing throughout the city. So we're going to see loads of examples of imagery, and the narrator is really going to go into depth about what he sees around him, so we can almost visualize it and be there with him. So Blake was actually a Victorian / Georgian poet, and this poem was written at a time where there was a lot of poverty and corruption, and we definitely see themes of that throughout the poem. He was also part of the Romantic movement, which was a time in literature where poets really focused on increasing worldview, and we definitely see that because he's really trying to convince us and really demonstrate the state of the world and what he sees, and really kind of translate that same message to us. Another really important thing to remember is around that time, France had recently gotten rid of their monarchy, and this created a really worrying time for the British monarchy. In the poem, we're going to see examples of Blake talking about the palace and how the palace is protected, and how soldiers fought for the British monarchy, and how right now they're living in a state of poverty and isolation. So in terms of the structure, it was written in 4 stanzas, and stanza refers to almost the paragraph. It's also written as a dramatic monologue, and what this means is in first person, so it kind of helps the reader to really engage with the poem more, and it's almost like they're experiencing it firsthand. It also has a regular rhyme scheme of A B A B, and this can also suggest that it kind of mimics the narrator walking through the city. So in terms of power, we definitely see the lack of power, especially in people. So people are hopeless, they're psychologically trapped, they're in this corrupt society, and there's so much poverty around them. There's also an imbalance of wealth. So people fought to protect the royals, and even the soldiers who did, they're in a society that's suffering too. Finally, we see corruption in also the church, which is really important because you think of religion as this really clean cut, really morally right thing, but we actually see that the church itself, the corruption runs so deep in London that religion is also tainted. Okay, so let's go on to the poem. So if you actually haven't read the poem, I want you to pause for a second, and I want you to go through it, see what you can take away, and then we're going to jump in with our analysis. Okay, so the first 2 lines are really powerful. It says, I wander through each charted street, near where the charted Thames does flow. Okay, so firstly, the use of I wonder. These first 2 words are really powerful. So the use of I is a first person, and it makes the poem more real. It makes the reader kind of get into the narrator's perspective and kind of feel everything that's happening a little bit more. Look at the use of wonder as well. Look at the connotations of the word. It almost suggests that there's almost nowhere to go and there's no purpose. So immediately we're struck with this image of the narrator kind of wandering aimlessly throughout London, and then we know we're going to see everything from his perspective. Okay, and then we're going to go on to charted. So you look at the first use of charted in the first line. So we're going to look at the diction, and diction is the vocabulary that a writer uses to have a specific impact. So charter basically means either regulated or controlled, and in one sense it also kind of suggests exactly how controlled London is, and the fact that they're so oppressed and they're kind of stuck in this society. But it's also very ironic because it contrasts to the rest of the poem, because we're going to see a lot of corruption, which is basically a result of the lack of control in society. Similarly, in the second line, we actually see charted Thames, and this is almost an oxymoron because charted means control, but Thames is obviously the river. So in a sense, how do we control nature? Or does it possibly suggest that their oppression runs so deep that even almost nature, something we can't control, we've almost attempted to get it under our reach? So those 2 interpretations are definitely something to think about, and that's only with charted Thames. So moving on, we find out more about the people. So first of all, in lines 3 and 4, we see mark in every face, marks of weakness, marks of woe. So obviously we have a lot of repetition with marks, and it's also a metaphor. So the use of mark in every face, so to suggest that this kind of misery, this corruption that he's seeing, runs so deep in everyone. He also expands on what the marks actually mean with weakness and woe, and these are very negative aspects that he's seeing in everybody. Also, look at the suggestion that people are marked. It could also be symbolic, are they branded? Are they unable to escape? Are they almost like cattle whose lives don't even belong to themselves? So those 2 lines immediately show us exactly what the people are like in London. Of course, this is almost like an oversimplification, but it's kind of used in a sense where the poet is actually trying to tell us that it runs so deeply, like it's so thorough, it's almost like everyone is suffering in the same way. This idea is also like built upon later, where we see a lot of people like being miserable and a lot of types of people. For example, stanza 2, like the first 3 lines, in every cry, in every infant's cry, in every voice. Again, we have that repetition, which kind of further demonstrate the extent to which no one is free from this misery. So at this point in the poem, we're definitely seeing a lot of like misery, a lot of weakness, a lot of woe in the people of London. And this with Blake has really tried to, construct this idea that it's so thorough that no one's able to escape from it. And that's the position that we're at right now in the poem. However, in the last line of the poem, we see something really interesting. Blake writes mind-forged manacles. So this is like alliteration with mind-forged and manacles, but it's also like a metaphor. So that idea of mind-forged, it almost sounds like it's made up. Almost as if like this kind of misery and this kind of weakness that they're experiencing, it's created in their own minds and they've kind of like trapped themselves in it. The use of manacles also like contributes to this idea because manacles are like chains, so it's almost like this imprisonment that they're so entrapped in. It's almost self-inflicted and they're not doing anything to get out of it. So it's really interesting because we see the misery that's apparently so prevalent to everybody, but then is Blake almost suggesting that they're kind of created this themselves, that it's self-inflicted, that if they really thought about it, like could they possibly break out of it? So that's definitely something to think about as we move on to the third stanza, because we see more of like the corruption and we see more of people actually being miserable. So the idea of people being miserable is shown through chimney sweepers cry and hapless soldiers sigh. So in one sense you have chimney sweepers who were usually children, and then we see like hapless soldiers, like veterans from the war. And then this could possibly suggest like this contrast could suggest that the idea of this misery and then this kind of like state that they're in, it's thorough regardless of your situation, regardless of what you've done. You haven't been rewarded as a soldier either. Okay, so at this point, let's do a quick recap of the people. So we've seen that almost everybody is marked with weaknesses, marks of woe. Everyone's crying, everyone seems miserable, and regardless of whether you're a chimney sweeper or regardless of whether you're a soldier, you can't escape this misery. You can't escape this, corrupt society that you're living in. However, it's also in this stanza, the third stanza, where we see kind of like corruption in society as well. Here, in terms of society, I mean almost like the corruption that's, separated from the people. So firstly, we see a blackening church. So the idea of black obviously has the connotations of something corrupt, something that's not pure. And when you put it next to church, it almost creates like an oxymoron. And it's really ironic because the church is meant to be a state of purity, it's meant to be a state of religion. However, the corruption in London is so prevalent that this church is also corrupted. This is a huge contrast to the holy image that's almost expected to come with religion. So therefore, we learn that even a place of God, even a place where religion that's meant to be so pure, isn't free from the corruption either. After talking about the soldiers in the third line, look at the fourth line where it says runs in blood down palace walls. So this use of a metaphor here, it refers to the blood spilt by civilians and by soldiers to protect the royals. The fact that the royals are kind of protected by these walls so that they can hide behind, but in actual fact what actually built those walls and what actually helped those walls stay up was the blood of the soldiers. Again, do you remember how during the context we spoke about how this is quite a worrying time for the British monarchy because of France getting rid of their monarchs? This is important to remember here because Blake is kind of suggesting that the only real reason why the royals can continue living like this, the fact that the monarchy still stands, is because of the blood of the civilians and blood of the soldiers who fought to protect them. And to be honest, there's no other reason, because we don't see them contributing towards anything in this. If anything, they've got the wealth, they're hiding behind the walls, but society around them is crumbling. So Blake kind of basically threw that in, and then in the last stanza he starts talking about like the people around him again. So firstly, look at the use of the term midnight streets. Think about the connotations of midnight. It's something hidden, something secret, something possibly wrong that is kind of hidden like at night and it's not in day. we kind of expand on this idea of things that are hidden in the corruption with youthful harlots. So the fact that they are harlots kind of demonstrates the state of the society as well, and the fact that they're youthful shows that, you know, people who are young are having to turn towards this kind of lifestyle, because, you know, it's the only income. Like, society is so corrupt that there isn't really anywhere else they can go. We also see these harlots cursing, which is obviously kind of shown as quite like a low way to communicate. However, even though they're harlots, even though they're young, even though they're cursing, the way that it's impacting the people around them is worse. So that's shown in the next line with the blast the newborn infant's tear. So here we see that as a metaphor to kind of show that the newborns themselves are already so corrupt. The fact that they're meant to be so pure, so new to the world, you know, so like untainted, but as soon as they come, they can't escape this either. Finally, we see the actual hopelessness of society with the term marriage hearse. So this is actually an oxymoron. So we see marriage as this happy thing, the start of new beginnings, but hearse is also like kind of saying that it's the end of it. It's almost like referring to death. So with marriage you have like a new like happiness, and then with hearse you have like death and like sadness. So like this oxymoron shows that possibly even in marriage, even if what's meant to be like such a happy lovely thing, that's also corrupt too. This kind of misery runs so deep in society that even like you know, the married, they can't get away with it. Even what's meant to be like one of the happiest periods in someone's life, like it's surrounded by miseries, and it's actually the end of it. Okay guys, so that was London. So we see this kind of idea, like the society is so corrupt, it's so run down, people are hopeless, like it, and it's so thorough, and it kind of runs so deep in society. This is immediately shown in the first stanza. It says, mark in every face, marks of weakness, marks of woe, and it kind of shows that so immediately we're starting off with this image that everyone is, you know, sad, and it's also it kind of demonstrates the extent. This is again shown through stanza 2, in every cry, in every infant's cry, in every voice. So the use of repetition here definitely kind of like helps us as the reader understand the extent to which it runs. We also see that no one is free from it, whether you're a chimney sweeper or whether you're a soldier. We also see corruption in society, and we see that with Blackening Church and the palace walls. So it's almost the fact that the worlds that we fought so hard to protect, they've left, and they're hiding behind their walls too, and they're hiding behind while society kind of crumbles around them. Finally, we end with the same image that nobody is free from this corruption, with youthful harlots curse and blast the newborn infants here. So the harlots show the status of society, whereas their infants actually show, you know, the fact that even when you're so new, when you're so, you know, you've just been born, you're meant to be this idea of purity, the fact that you can't escape it either. And in the end, we end with marriage hearse. So this kind of shows that even in the happiest times, people are still miserable. Okay guys, so that was an in-depth analysis and interpretations of the poem, and then I concluded with a really short overview about everything that happened. I will be uploading a 5-minute version of this later this week, and that's going to go kind of like skim through everything we've done, so it might be great for like last minute revision, and I'll also be highlighting some of my key quotes, so basically like my favorite quotes throughout the entire poem. So if you're interested in that, like definitely check it out guys, and if not, let me know if you guys have any requests, and if you have any like interpretations of your own, please leave them in the comments. And yeah guys, I'll speak to you soon.